Namaskar, welcome to this edition of Weekly Dialogues. Today we are going to discuss a very hot topic, and that is why do riots occur in India even today? When the partition had happened, one of the arguments was that it was very difficult for two communities to live together, the Hindus and the Muslims. At least that is what the Muslim lead had been arguing, and ultimately it was thought even by the other party, the Congress, that it was best that the partition occurred so that the Muslims could have their Pakistan and then there would be peace in this part of India. But what we have seen is that this has not happened, and why this has not happened has some very good reasons. One of the very good reasons is that even after the partition, the Muslim leadership has remained the same. The leadership which had participated in the freedom struggle got marginalized after the partition, and very Muslim League leaders who had participated in the Indian provinces, the provinces that remained in India, they again became active and joined mainstream parties, especially the Congress, and continued to do the same kind of politics that they had been doing earlier. So the essential nature of the politics on the Muslim side remained the same. This has been analyzed in 1942, continuing through 1945 to 47 by Dr. Ambedkar. And because the essential nature of that politics has remained the same, it would be very educative for us to go back and see what Dr. Ambedkar had analyzed this riot politics as, and what did he term this? What were the basic reasons that fed this riot politics? He analyzed this at the social level, and he analyzed this also at the communal level. So when he analyzed it at the social level, he said that one of the major reasons that continue to create differences between the Hindus and the Muslims are that the Hindus are looking at a number of factors which contribute to their material well-being, whereas the Muslim politics is almost singularly concentrated and focused on religion. So when it comes to electing somebody, especially at that time when there were separate electorates, if somebody has to be elected, then the only factor that governs the Muslim electorate was religion. Has this changed in the new India? Has this changed in the independent India? No, it has not changed. Why it has not changed is that because the country was divided on the question of what was called two-nation theory. That two-nation theory used to be called Qawmi Nazariya or Do Qawmi Nazariya by the Muslim League. Now slowly, as those same Muslim League elements got infiltrated into the mainstream parties, especially the Congress, in the 70s, the slogan became what is called Milli Takhassus. Milli Takhassus means special community identity. This Milli Takhassus created some kind of a reaction among the Hindus. And today again what we see, the riots that are happening, the protest which resulted into the riots, the slogan that is being raised is Mazhabi Pehchan. Essentially all the three remain the same. Dr. Ambedkar had a lot to say on this, and something that he said needs to be actually read out word for word. And I will attempt 2 or 3 points that he has written in his very seminal, very important book that is called Pakistan or the Partition of India. That was initially written as Thoughts on Pakistan in 1942, and then it was revised and expanded in the form of Pakistan or the Partition of India, and it came out in 1945. So what did he say at that time? He said that Muslims have a spirit of exploitation, and it is furnished by the Muslim insistence upon cow slaughter and stoppage of music before mosques. Islamic law does not insist upon the slaughter of the cow for sacrificial purposes, and no Muslim, when he goes to Hajj, sacrifices the cow on Mecca or Medina. But in India, they will not be content with the sacrifice of any other animal. Music may be played before a mosque in all Muslim countries without any objection. Even in Afghanistan, which is not a secularized country, no objection is taken to music before a mosque. But in India, the Muslims must insist upon its stoppage for no other reason except that the Hindus claim a right to it. Now, try and put this into perspective in today's India. Of course, there is also a leftist element that supports these Islamist pronouncements these days. But when people support cattle lifting obliquely, and when there is a reaction, the Hindu reaction, and somebody gets killed, there is a disproportionate amount of noise in the liberal media, without ever mentioning the fact that cattle lifting and cow slaughter is the main reason for that. And this used to happen even before the partition. Similarly, there's another thing, something very, very important that Dr. Ambedkar says. Says that what is noticeable is the adoption by the Muslims of the gangsters method in politics. Gundagardi. Rajniti mein gundagardi. The riots are a sufficient indication that gangsterism has become a settled part of their strategy in politics. They seem to be consciously and deliberately imitating the Sudeten Germans in the means employed by them against the Czechs. He is referring to the Second World War, the pre-Second World War, Sudetenism against the Czechs in the Hungarian Empire. Now, he continues with this and he says that so long as Muslims were the aggressors, the Hindus were passive, and in the conflict they suffered more than the Muslims did. But this is no longer true. The Hindus have learned to retaliate and no longer feel any compunction in knifing a Muslim. You look at this in the context of the Delhi riots. We know the Shaheen Bagh protest, and we know that by and large whatever is coming to the fore, the investigations as they're coming out, the riots were started by the Muslim elements. The Tahir Hussain saga is now well known to everybody. But when the reaction happened, then the loss of life was more on the Muslim side. And that is now being presented expertly as victimhood. This is something that Dr. Ambedkar had talked about even at that time. So he says that the question is how to deal with this. The Congress Hindu nationalist whose policy is to tolerate and appease the Muslims by political and other concessions is not working. Why it will not work is, he says that it seems to me that Congress has failed to realize two things. Please listen to this. The first thing which the Congress has failed to realize is that there is a difference between appeasement and settlement, and that the difference is an essential one. Appeasement means buying off the aggressor by conniving at his acts of murder, rape, arson and loot against innocent persons who happen for the moment to be the victims of his displeasure. On the other hand, settlement means laying down the bounds which neither party to it can transgress. The second thing the Congress has failed to realize is that the policy of concession has increased Muslim aggressiveness, because Muslims interpret these concessions as a sign of defeatism on part of the Hindus and the absence of the will to resist. The policy of appeasement will involve the Hindus in the same fearful situation in which the Allies found themselves as a result of the policy of appeasement which they adopted towards Hitler. How important words are these? And can we not apply this very analysis in the present situation? If you look at most of the opposition in the Indian context today, they seem to be following the same policy of appeasement and of giving more and more concessions. You can see that happening in almost every opposition ruled states in the context of the anti-CEA oppositions. There is a competition, one after the other. The state government, which is ruled by the opposition, says that okay, they will not implement the CEA, as if they have a choice. Under the federal constitution, they don't have a choice, because it would be a direct violation of the Article 254. Yet they continue to appease by saying this. And this appeasement is going to lead to the same tragic denouement that had happened in 1947. Fortunately, in the center, the government is not going through this route, and they are not appeasing. Of course, they have had a little pause, because this was some kind of a stage-managed, orchestrated situation, which first orchestrated protests, and then ultimately, as it happened, there was a election in between, and after the election was won, there were full-scale riots, as it looks, engineered by one side and then retaliated by the other side. There's another very important book this time. This HV Seshadri had written a beautiful book, The Tragedy of Partition. And he also said something similar, and I would like to quote him as well. He says that the tragic story of partition by HV Seshadri. He said there were two behavior patterns which ultimately led to the partition of India. So the Muslim behavior pattern was characterized by acrimony, accusations, complaints, demands, denunciations, and street riots. I'll repeat it. Acrimony, accusations, complaints, demands, denunciations, and street riots. Now try and fit this behavior pattern into what has happened after the Citizenship Amendment Act was passed by the Parliament. I think it's almost exact repetition, almost 100% fit on this template. The only difference is that the next what he says is that the national behavior pattern, on the other hand, was characterized by acquiescence, assent, cajolery, concessions, cowardice, self-reproach, and surrender. Fortunately, it has not happened this way as far as the central government is concerned, but as far as the number of state governments is concerned, exactly this, what is called the national behavior pattern, has been followed. Why I have brought this forward is that the people of India should not think that what is happening today is something new. Pakistan is not just a territory. Pakistan is an idea. Pakistan is that idea which was laid out in the Objectives Resolution of Pakistan. And that was the first point in the Objectives Resolution of Pakistan, which also forms the basis of the Constitution of Pakistan today, is that the sovereignty of this earth belongs to Allah and Allah alone. This is the fundamental of the what is called the Muslim Ummah. Just because a number of Muslims, large number of Muslims stayed back in India, it does not mean that their allegiance to their Ummah, or what was called the Qawm, has gone away. The clerical class, what is called the Ashraf class, the upper caste among the Muslims, and the Urdu press, they have continued after an interregnum of about 10-12 years, they have continued on that same line, which breeds separatism, which breeds insecurity, and which breeds a sense of alienation among the larger Muslim community. We have to recognize this. If we recognize this, I think we would be moving substantially towards resolving it. How we can resolve it, I think we will talk at some other time. Thank you.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.